luxury was never about products at all. If you look at Apple today, the product is not bad. We always knew these products were manufactured somewhere else, some factory. The Indian hospitality sector has created luxury brands even in New York and London now.
And I've got two spectacular guests joining us to sort of help us understand this. Dr. Sanjay Arora, market consulting and managing partner at Shell's Advertising, is with us. Dilip Cherian, Image Guru, is here as well. Dilip, let me begin with you. There is so much to decode from this story and real fun, frankly. I've had so much fun actually understanding and going through all these TikToks on what good use of marketing and social media can be done. There's a question on fakes. There's a question on reliability of these brands. There is, of course, the question of geopolitics. And then the question on why are the brands so silent about this? And I really want to understand how does India emerge and what is our takeaway from all of this. Let me start by your first takeaway. As you see the story unfold, what are you thinking?
I love the word logo installation. I think that is at the core of the whole thing. Can you imagine the kind of the allegation of the kind of value that is created by logo installation? Forget the packaging and the repackaging and all of that. So I think that it is time that luxury buyers, whether it's an Hermes, whether it's a Birkin, whether it's a Louis Vuitton, recognize that there is the possibility that what they are paying for is just being marketed at. It is not so much anymore. And I say this anymore very guardedly, because of the volumes of trade that is happening in luxury product. Luxury production in Europe simply cannot have ever coped with the kind of consumption patterns that have emerged in the last 10 years. So, it doesn't matter what we say, what we hear. It seems convincing to anyone who understands production and the scales of manufacture that if you want to be lied to, it is, in a sense, a bit like being in relationships which are toxic. If you want to buy that story, go ahead and buy it. The only sucker there is you. The only winner there is the brands that own the brand and are installing their logos into produce which they are not 100% manufacturers of. Now, what are you actually buying? You're buying into the promise that your bag or whatever other product that you're buying is actually made by X instead of being made by Y. Why would X make it more expensive? Is it the material? Is it the workmanship? Or is it the logo installation? Now, if you want to pay so much of a premium for logo installation, then joy to the world and profits to the Europeans. Are the Chinese running this Trojan horse at this point of time for a particular reason? Are they hurting European manufacturers? No. What is actually being implied by releasing these videos, and please understand that none of this is not part of a pattern, is because they want to devalue the kind of branding story that the West has been imposing on product that they've so-called produced, and that begins to shake the fundamentals of this whole economy.
I think you bring up lots of pertinent points, Dilip. You're talking about how it's not just about the image or the journey these brands are taking in this young, connected sort of Gen Z world which questions everything. It's also got to do with the pattern of these videos coming out. But Sanjay, if I can come to you next, for years we thought of West being the place for luxury and East being the place for counterfeits, right? They make and we sort of get in the fakes in place and we sort of make an economy out of that. That seems to be shifting. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this series called Crazy Rich Asians. There's a book that talks about how that entire consumption pattern is changing completely. Are we reading too much then into this trend, or do you think this one is going to stay for a while? This could actually shake up how we look at luxury.
Okay, I'm going to stick my head out and say this storm will pass. Luxury was never about products at all. It was about a story. It was about you telling the world a story about you in relation with that brand and how you wanted to be seen by the world outside through this logo. And let me tell you, the story building has a heritage to it, a lineage to it. And I'm one of those who have always said that more value is added by marketing to for any product category than is produced in the factory as such. If you look at Apple today, it's a factoryless brand. It doesn't own any factory. It doesn't produce anything. It just designs, patents, and gets it manufactured anywhere in the world. Now India too. So manufacturing have always maintained this very, very strongly. Manufacturing isn't the rocket science. The rocket science is marketing, and marketing is creating value, not maybe more often in the mind, in the head, rather than in the product itself.
But what happens to marketing? What happens to these stories when TikTok videos like these come out?
It won't hurt them in the long run at all because we never were buying the product. Understand, the product is not bad. We always knew these products were manufactured somewhere else, some factory. But the whole story to tell the world, look, I own this, I can own this at this price, you can't, and therefore I am me and you are you. And that will still continue. From time immemorial, kings and royals, etc., it's been continuing like this. They own things that the commoner could not, and that was the whole story. And now these the rich oligarchs or whoever you call them today want to say the same thing to the world. So the value lies never in the product at all, and it will not make a major difference. And let me tell you, most of these claims that have been made now. Louis Vuitton, for example, has come out with a statement saying that they don't get these manufactured at that point at all. So these are counterfeiters because they have a confidentiality agreement. They cannot come out and say we manufacture them. So the real ones will never come out, in fact.
But is this part of a bigger plan then? And Dilip, I want to pick on what you said earlier, that there seems to be a pattern in which China is releasing these videos. Never, everything that comes out of China has to be taken with a pinch of salt any which way, right? So when we see one after the other TikToker talking about why let's expose the West, what are they really doing here?
You know, what they're doing is actually denting a very crucial part of what we consider Western civilization. What Dr. Arora talks about is the fact of myth making, narrative building as a crucial and fundamental part of marketing. If you notice, there is no story if you say that Foxconn makes the Apple phone. That's because what is embedded is not the process of the skin color of the person making it. It is the technology. That embedding is what makes an Apple product an Apple product. But unfortunately, you can't say the same thing about a handbag because there is no technology. As long as you can compare leather to leather, tanning to tanning, and gold plating to gold plating, you know, the house of cards begins to tremble and probably the quake is going to be substantial. I tend to agree with Dr. Arora that perhaps this is yet another storm that will pass. But what will end up is probably that Chinese factories will end up being able to extract better value because suddenly you can't distinguish between one product and the other, except that maybe the Chinese story and the Chinese emperors never really carried these bags for long enough for them to become status symbol. So, you know, it is quite possible that the French story or the Italian story is considered more valid and valuable. But remember one thing, that there is an entire generation and an army of TikTok consumers out there making their first purchases. For them, suddenly, I think there is value confusion.
You're absolutely right, which is what I was going to come back to. That you're saying it will not have repercussions, perhaps in a society which understands the meaning of luxury, but a generation which is just waking up to this. is questioning everything, is questioning value, is questioning authenticity, is questioning, impact on environment. When it comes to all of this and they look at this video from a TikToker saying, hey, if you don't really care about the brand, about that big Prada logo or anything else flashing, I will give you the same product and it will cost you 500 times less. I'm wondering if consumers are actually going to buy that because they're flashing their numbers, they're flashing their WhatsApp numbers as well. I actually managed to get in touch with one of them. And this is Sen Bags, the first guy who made that 10 million views video. And I asked him that, can you talk about it? Can you tell me a little more where the story came from? What was the urge? What was the need to actually come out with this? And his standard response was, since the video has gone viral, we've been inundated with business. Please give us 7 to 8 days to get back to you because the phone lines have not stopped. So that's the story emerging in China. So there are clearly people buying it, Sanjay, unlike what you're saying.
No, they'll buy it. Of course, as I said, if you look at it as a pyramid, there's the base of the pyramid, which is far larger, the Warner base. They would want to buy anything, remotely connected to that at 1/10th, 1/50th the price. So there's going to be a massive market there. Therefore the counting market is at $1 trillion, as you said, because that's the base of the pyramid. I can't afford the original, so I might as well buy what I can get. But and there are various segments. So when you say teenagers, now teenagers are buying luxury streetwear. So there's Supreme with Louis Vuitton connection. Why are they buying? It's streetwear, basic streetwear. So even the idea is a human being wants to stand out. And he wants to say something about himself to himself and the world outside. And this language happens to the back. That's what it is all about at the end of the day. So there are segments in the market and there will always be that top of the pyramid who want exclusivity.
Yeah.
If not this, then something else.
Okay, Dilip, I want to understand, what does India learn, take away from this trend emerging? We are in middle of fighting our own battle for made in India products. We are in middle of, again, telling the world that, listen, look at us, look at how the kind of craftsmanship we can make and kind of luxury brands that are emerging out of the country as well. What do we learn from this entire episode?
I think we learned two things: the power of negotiation and the power of brand. So if India wants to get a chunk or a small slice, and we have zero at the moment of most of this, we need to figure out what are the products that truly can be called and must be called and should be called and can be called made in India. It is probably a small handful of products which incorporate enormous handworking, enormous skills, or pedigree of the product content. For example, I know of a new brand in luxury cosmetics or washes and stuff, which is based in Ayurveda but incorporates certain Swiss nutraceuticals into it. Okay, so it is in the merging of this that a very high value brand begins to emerge. Now, if they tell their story correctly, the fact that some of these products can actually only be sourced in India, and there is pharmacological testing which goes into the origins of the ashwagandha or whatever it is. Now, for example, if those stories are well told, there is an Indian value to be told. If you want to try and do this with manufacturing and you want to compete with BYD, then God bless you. It ain't happening for the next many, many years. So it could be a garment, it could be a Banarasi fabric, it could be other things which India has access to the GI tagging advantage. And India must recognize that there is huge value to be actually gained, which we have lost over hundreds of years of selling this product cheap. So we need to up that game, and narratives need to be created, stories need to be told, but most importantly, purity needs to be emphasized. Origin needs to be emphasized, and you cannot have shortcuts to it, which is a big problem that a lot of Indian manufacturers have had. They will put in one strand of saffron and the rest will be some other rubbish flower statement and they will call it a packet of saffron. So if we begin to steal from ourselves, then luxury and branding will never happen.
I understand what Dilip is saying, and perhaps not naming, but a lot of the D2C revolution actually draws its roots from this. So we are hoping that this is being heard. There, Sanjay, very quickly, what will it take for India then to not just be the back-end manufacturer, again a hub for cheap labor, but become the place which makes the next big luxury brands? Because we have the craftsmanship. Where are we lacking in the story? What will it take?
So basically, India first needs to define the India story itself. Okay, like the French defined the French story, the Italians defined the Italian story. India needs to first come to grips with its own story, and then the brands coming out of this heritage will be there. Incidentally, the Indian hospitality sector has created luxury brands even in New York and London now, and they are being highly appreciated. So it's not that that we aren't already there. Some categories we are already making our mark. In fact, historically, our muslin and our silks, the Bengal muslin could go through a ring, and that no one else could make. So we need to figure out where we are strong and not ape the West and do what they are doing. Because we can't get better at their job for them. We need to get better at what we really are good at and refine that, and then it's all about building a story at the end of the day. If you aren't able to do that, even the best product cannot command a luxury price. It may be successful, but not the luxury price. There, the story has to be built.
All right. So who's telling the story? That's what seems to be mattering the most here. What story are they telling? How authentic is it? Where is it finding its roots? So maybe Mr. Piyush Goyal, next time he talks about brands taking inspiration, maybe he'll look at this episode of TBC and say that, oh, you know what? Let's look at luxury as well. That's another area that we need to work harder. Thank you both for joining us on this very, very fascinating chat.
Subha.